If you think it's bad right now, imagine what it would be like having everything price controlled. We had to fight for everything. For example, everything being rationalized, you will get like a ration card, and each family was allowed to purchase one loaf of bread per person per day. You could not buy any more.
Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
6-year-old child, I was trying to imagine what is it like, because obviously there was no visual, so this is a radio broadcast, and I was closing my eyes and trying to imagine myself looking at the beautiful America and the skyscrapers, and I tried to put myself into the
your journey from being a groundskeeper to who you are today. Adrian Danila, founder and CEO of Multifamily X Consulting Group. With over 2 decades in multifamily, Adrian began his journey as a groundskeeper in 2003, working his way through maintenance, leasing, management, and regional operations before founding his consulting practice. Known for his hands-on approach and deep understanding of multifamily operations from the ground up. Adrian Danila, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Super excited to chat with you. So maybe we can start with, tell me a little bit about your childhood and what was it like?
So 1975 is when I was born. That's a long time ago for probably most of your viewers here, most of your audience. But I was born and I grew up in a communist country, Romania. My childhood was a very happy childhood. My parents, I got a lot of love from my parents. They were both teachers. Learn a lot from them growing up. One of the things that happens in communism, the government controls the information. They don't like competition. Obviously, it's not a free exchange of ideas. Therefore, there were only a couple of TV channels. Each one of them broadcasted for like 2 hours a day. And then the radio was 24/7, but still was mainly communist propaganda. One thing about communism is that they hate competition. They actually typically kill it or put it in jail or silence it in some way. My father and I remember being like 6 years old. We had a lot of electricity shortages at the time. So my father and I will sit in the dark, and we had a battery-operated radio set. And we were listening to the programs of Voice of America in Romanian. They had programs in Romanian a couple of hours a night. And once a week, they had these reportages about the American cities, Chicago, Detroit, LA, New York. And me as a 6-year-old child, I was trying to imagine what is it like, because obviously there was no visual, so this is a radio broadcast. And I was closing my eyes and trying to imagine myself looking at the beautiful America and the skyscrapers, and I tried to put myself into the picture out there. And that was secretly the first time that I actually wished that maybe when I'm growing up, one day I had this opportunity to walk down the street and actually look at the skyscrapers myself in person. So that was as an early child, I had this desire. The thing was with thinking this, you can't really express it, you can't really share it. My dad told me, first of all, do not share with anyone at school that, we're listening. It wasn't legal to listen to those programs. So then I just kind of kept things to myself. That was my childhood. And we lived under communism for the first 14 years of my life. Things were extremely tough. Everything was rationalized. Price control. I think this is very important for us to just kind of touch on a little bit for a second, because there's a lot of conversation now in multifamily, a lot of chatter about rent control. I'm just gonna say this to everybody that's watching. If you think that things are bad now, imagine how bad would they be when actually this becomes maybe a national law. Hopefully you won't. The examples are already here, on New York and San Francisco, rent control, I think Minneapolis, Minnesota, something. But then I'm gonna make a parallel into my childhood. The government controlled most of the pricing, whether it was food, appliances, whatever products or services they would control. if you were to go to a farmer's market, they had pricing set up for how much people should charge for their produce. And what that does is it generates huge shortages of produce because the free market, it's not there. People can, set up their pricing based on supply and demand. So if you think it's bad right now, imagine what it would be like having everything price controlled in multifamily. It destroys the incentive of investors to invest in real estate. It destroys the desire for developers to develop more properties because it reduces the incentive for them to make profits. And honestly, that's the purpose of any business to exist, right? So, message out there, this doesn't work. And let's just say that it didn't end up well for those that imposed back in my childhood, those prices, controlling the prices, and it's never worked. It's not just like an isolated, like personal story. Everywhere this has been tried, it failed, right? So it's not because it wasn't rightly applied. It's kind of like a thing of social engineering, right?
Yeah.
So social engineering also doesn't work. We humans are built a certain way. When there's things imposed from outside, trying to change our behavior, to change our DNA, the way we're built, the way we're thinking, I haven't seen that being of a lot of success. And I make another parallel to communism as well. Communism is a form of social engineering that fell miserably, and it still fails. People still trying, and it also killed more people than the Nazis, than any type of war. There's an estimation up to like 100 million people that were killed by communist regimes all over the world. So.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. A lot to unpack there. I guess I'm curious, how do you feel like growing up in a communist country gave you competitive advantages or disadvantages in the US?
I'm glad that you brought up advantages and also disadvantages. And I'm going to touch on both. The fact that we didn't have anything within hand reach, and we had to fight for everything. For example, everything being rationalized, you will get like a ration card, and each family was allowed to purchase one loaf of bread per person per day. You could not buy any more. We had, I think, like half a gallon of cooking oil per family per month. A couple of pounds or a pound of sugar per family per month. And when the resources are so limited, and it's all about a survival, it kind of builds this stamina and this resilience. When coming to a society, to a free society like United States, right? Years later, things have not been as tough as they could have been for me, because I'm used to live with very little. I'm used to, be able to save if I need to save, and just like preserve myself in a situation that maybe others that grew up or were born into a very easy, within hand reach type of situation, it makes it harder, right? And it's a natural thing. It's not a criticizing or on someone's like upbringing. It's just the way it is. Like, we know there's no pain, no gain. Unfortunately, there was a lot of pain, right, growing up. But then also helped me become a stronger person.
Do you feel like any of the challenges you had as a child has kind of left long-lasting like impressions, negative impressions? And
I have memories. I remember, but it's never in a way that I will say it's damaging. It's a lot of lessons, and then every time I see a situation that might develop in my current, in a current environment, in our current situation that we're living in 2024, it makes me click. It's kind of like a deja vu, and I'm saying, and I tell people, you got to be careful because this is not good. Like I've lived this already and it's not ending well, I promise you. That type of thing. But was I affected by it? At the time, yes, but also I was a child. So I was surrounded by a loving family. They shielded me from a lot of the stuff that, happened to, adults back in the day. So I'll say, really not so much, but I also learned a lot. And there's a lot that, again, like that I use to overcome situations throughout my life, my adult life.
You talked a little bit about your father. What was your relationship like with your mother and father?
So I was very loved by both of my parents. I remember that when I was he used to be the coach of the local soccer team in our village, and
Your dad?
Yes, my dad was also a teacher. Remember, and ever since I was like 3 or 4 years old, I wanted to be with him everywhere he went. So we would travel to like away games. And I even have pictures with him when I was like probably like 3 or 4 years old. Wow. At a soccer game, where he was the coach. He held my hand, so I had wonderful, beautiful memories with that. And he used to read a lot to me. I remember this like yesterday. He used to read to me for hours until he begged me to like stop asking for him to read because he was losing his voice
Before bed?
Yeah. Yeah, it was an amazing experience. Again, just growing up around him and around his passion for soccer really made me turn into a soccer fan later on. And then mom did everything for us, for me, for my brother. I have a younger sibling. He's 7 years younger than I am. She sacrificed. She basically lived for us to have the best things we have, and the best education, the best of everything. Even under communism, I remember, obviously, with food shortages and all sorts of shortages, she will wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. She will wake me up, and we will go to the city, and we will stand in lines for hours. She actually made some bags that were like very large bags that you could put like 20, 30 pounds worth of stuff in those bags. And we would go and we will just stand in line at different stores, different food stores, without actually knowing what's out there available, because there was nothing available. They were waiting for a shipment with, it could have been chicken, it could have been, pork, it could have been like vegetables, eggs, you never knew. You just stand in line and wait, and don't have the choices. You basically bought whatever came in. And that was rationalized too. But she took me with her because I was considered a person. And if they were selling her a carton of eggs, I would also qualify for a carton of eggs. So we basically double the quantities this way. The same with chicken, right? If they were selling chicken, whole chicken, she will get one chicken, and then I will be counted as a person. And then she was in a position to buy two instead of one. And we would do that like about every month or every other month, go to the city and then come back with those bags full to have enough food to last us until the next trip to the city.
Wow. That's awesome. That's crazy. And you mentioned you have siblings.
Yes, I do have a younger brother. He's 7 years younger than I am. He lives in Romania.
Okay. Are you close to him?
Yeah, very close. Okay. We actually just spoke yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
Did he ever decide to move to the U.S. or want to move to the U.S.?
He never did. I haven't convinced him to visit yet because he has a lot of temptations. Now, Europe being part of the European Union, is very cheap and very easy for him to travel to Europe. So the cost is a lot cheaper than, coming to United States. I convinced him to, come and visit at some point. Probably it's going to be another like 3 or 4 years. I think I might have a better chance with his son. We're planning to bring him over with my mom to visit during the summer next year. So they're going through the formalities right now at a U.S. embassy, submitting the proper paperwork and everything. So I'm really looking forward to have my nephew here in the United States to give him a rundown on some big cities and some beautiful places that we have out here.
Apart from your parents, were there any influential figures in your life growing up that you feel like had a big impact on you today?
That's an amazing question. Actually, I consider that the most influential person in my life was my grandfather, my father's father, and I'm gonna explain. He was a very simple person. He only went to school to like third or fourth grade, and back in the day, his parents pulled him out of school so he could help with work, like um, with they used to do agriculture, right? And then he didn't go to school past fourth grade. Being a young person, he encountered the World War II. He went into the war. One of his four fingers out of one of his hand got amputated. So he was left with just one that was kind of like this, looking like a claw. And he knew the value of things. If he was going down the street and he saw a piece of wire, he would just pick it up, a screw, a nut, anything. He will pick them up and take them home with him. And I said, Grandpa, why are you doing all of this? Remember, shortages, right? It wasn't like he could go to the store and everything is available. He said, son, you never know when you're gonna need it. And sure enough, every time I had to do a repair to repair my bicycle or anything, I knew the place where he kept all this extra stuff. Almost always, I found something that I needed out there because he saved them for whenever we might need. He had 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. All of them except one went to higher education. Remember, he only went to 4th grade, but he understood the value of education. So he had, my father became a teacher. He had another aunt of mine that became a teacher as well. Another one became a nurse. And then the last 2, another one was an electrician, and the 5th one was she was not a stay at home, but basically she worked and lived in a village where I grew up. She did agriculture, but basically 3 out of 5 of his kids went to school. And remember, he couldn't like make much money. He had like his income was very minimum from the jobs that he did, right, for money. But he always saved. He always had money. He always saved. At the time, growing up, all the stuff that I'm sharing with you right now seemed like it was a foolish thing to do, and I took it for granted. Later in life, after he got really old, and then after he passed, I started realizing the value of these lessons that I learned from him. So it wasn't for decades for me understanding the real value of how this person lived his life and how he influenced the life of others. So to me, by far, I think Grandpa, he's my biggest influence was in my life. And funny enough, like I said, not as I grew up, but as I become an adult, a young adult.
What was the process moving to the USA like?
So this is another story. I have a first cousin that lives in Canada. He ran from the communist regime in 1989 and ended up living in Canada. There is a U.S. Government program. It's called the Visa Lottery. Basically, the U.S. government gives away 50,000 visas every year. And then you could literally like put up an application with a picture, and then they pull names out of the hat based on each country has a certain number of tickets allocated. I'll say tickets, green cards allocated. And my cousin kept saying, you have to apply for this because it only costs you like, taking a picture and a few bucks. And then you could have the opportunity to live in the United States. And I ignored this for the longest. 2001, I got married. And then my cousin kept saying, hey, there's another opportunity coming up. In a couple of months, you could submit for Visa Lottery. So I told my wife at the time, this is literally weeks after we got married, hey, let's put up an application, let's submit. And she said, well, I'll do it because, you want to do this, but I don't believe this is a real lottery. I don't believe that, we have a chance to win. I never won anything in my life. 5 months later, we received a huge envelope in the mail. She picked up the envelope. I was home. She was coming home from work, and she came in holding this envelope, saying, "I don't want you to get like super excited, but I think we won the visa lottery." So I said, "What? Are we going to America? We're going to America." It's like, no, wait a second. Like, it says right here that there's a process. You don't, like, just because you got picked, you're not guaranteed a green card. You got to go through interviewing process, a background process, and everything. I said, no, there's nothing that could stop us anymore. Like, we're going. You want to go, right? She's like, yeah, I go with you. And this was in 2002, like May. 2003, February the 2nd was the day when we first stepped foot in the United States. And this was in Atlanta, Georgia. So that is the story of us coming to America, how we ended up here.
That's awesome. I grew up in the Bay Area in California, but when I was 12, I moved to India. I ended up going to middle school and high school in India and came back here for college. And a lot of my friends in India weren't US citizens. So they would go to college in the US, but after graduating, they'd had to find a job to stay. And for the longest time, I took having a US citizenship for granted, right? I think when you live here, you kind of just assume, because everybody you know has a US citizenship, you take it for granted. But it's just so challenging now for anybody to get a citizenship, to go through the visa process. And it just makes you so grateful for that and the opportunities that come with this country.
Yeah, I think you're making a great point here. And you, just like myself, have a different appreciation for living in this country, because you have your perspective is not like one-sided. Right? For someone that was born here, lived here their entire life, it's at times, challenging, hard to understand what is it like not to live here.
Yeah.
But for someone like you that, lived part of your life in India, or someone like me that actually grew up in, I came here when I was 28 years old. By the way, I didn't speak any English when I came
Wow.
here. Yeah. But we have, to go back to my point, I think we naturally get that different type of appreciation because the perspective is different, right? It's I'll say not wider, but it's just different because you have a way of comparing what is it here with what is it there, and you kind of like see the differences and what's the difference between the opportunities here, there, and of course the opportunities here are, in my opinion, from my personal experience, something that you don't really find anywhere in the world.
How did you learn English coming here?
So yeah, as I was saying, I knew about like 30 to 50 words in English. Most of them were bad words. I wouldn't really say them, on camera. So that was very basic, right? How are you? Good morning, good day. And I went to night school. When we first came here, we had a family of Romanians. They were from the same village as I was, that helped us stay with them for a few months. They helped us fill out for paperwork and everything. And then we learned from them that there's night school available around where we were at. And my wife and I both went. It was a government program. So we went, we signed up for the school and we started going to night school. Now, my wife kept going for like 6-9 months a year probably. I dropped out after like 3 months because I was working a lot and I couldn't keep up with day job and the night classes. But at the time I made it a point to find a job that actually it's with an established company where people actually speak English, because my first jobs were around the Romanian community with individuals that weren't like really speaking. And even though some of them like spoke well English, if there was a crew of Romanian, naturally we will speak Romanian amongst ourselves. And this would not be a great practice for me. So then I said I had to break the cycle, because I came to United States to be an American, not to not to stay being a Romanian. Not to say there's something wrong with that, but I also wanted to be an American, and learning English is a must. You can't really do anything without it. So then I started applying for jobs, and then maybe if we have time, we could cover that part too, right? And I got in with companies with an apartment management company, where basically I started practicing the way I heard people talking, right? I'm still having challenges with sometimes making grammar mistakes and everything, but I learned by doing it. As I was working, I was at the same time listening to other people talking and basically trying to correct myself and learn the meaning of words.
I want to shift gears here a little bit. One thing that I really love about this industry is that there's so many examples, like I think even yours in particular, where people either fall into the industry and start from the ground level, and in 1 decade, 2 decades, rise to be leaders in this industry, which I think is super special. You have a very interesting story, starting as a groundskeeper. I'd love to hear about that.
Yes. So this is 2003, about 4 or 5 months after we came to United States. We got in touch. We connected with a friend of a friend. This friend of a friend used to go to Georgia Tech. He was doing his PhD in science, and he was also like an assistant. And I kept asking, him for advice. How can I get with a company where people speak English, and I could get maybe some benefits? And he suggested to me to apply to the Georgia Tech website, which at the time had a couple of groundskeeper openings. So I went ahead and I applied, but nobody called. Now what happened then was that this word groundskeeper stuck with me. And then I went back to all the job boards that were available at the time, Monster and Yahoo Jobs, and I can't even remember what else was back in 2003, and kept looking using the search word groundskeeper. And I kept applying. And this happened for another 3 or 4 months, until about September of 2003. I got a phone call from a manager at an apartment community in Duluth, Georgia. It was a smaller community. They only had a part-time job opening. I went there. I been interviewed. I was still speaking very little English, but they took the chance with me. So this goes back to what you're saying, not just the story, the entire journey, but then how inclusive and how great of an industry this is. Someone that saw me, a person new to the country, wasn't speaking much English, and just giving me the chance, taking that chance with me, and with no obvious work history or references. That went on for about 6 months. And then while I was working there, I was living at a different apartment community about 20 minutes away. At that apartment community where I was living, they had a gentleman, a older gentleman that was the groundskeeper at a community. Very early every morning, 6:30, I'll see him on the grounds getting things started for the property, for residents to go to work and have a clean environment and so on. And one day, as I was going to my part-time job, he wasn't there. So when I came back from work from my part-time job, I told my wife, I said, I don't think that the groundskeeper here, the apartment community, works here anymore. She said, why do you think that? Well, I don't see him in the morning. And then her reaction was like, you're really crazy. People get sick, they take vacation. And I had this feeling, I was like, no, I promise you, he's not working here anymore. So she laughed at me. Next morning, I go to work again, and again, he's not there. So on my way back from my part-time job, I stopped at the leasing office and I asked to speak with a manager. So he made himself available. And he asked me, how can I help you? Well, I was wondering if you have any openings. So he says, we actually have an opening. It's a groundskeeper / punch, make ready. And I said,
what is it? Punch?
Punch, yeah, punch. Make ready. Okay. The technician that makes vacant apartments ready for moving. And I said, I really don't know what punch is. I have no idea. I am currently a groundskeeper, only part-time because it's a smaller community. But I would love an opportunity to interview and learn. So sure enough, he interviewed me. He had the service manager interview me, and I got the job. And that was my dream job, $10 an hour with benefits. That was my goal for at the time. If I could secure a job for $10 an hour and benefits, this would be amazing. And that was like my first huge win in an industry, $10 with benefits.
That's just so inspiring to see, you starting there and now seeing how far you've come and all the iterations you've had in your journey. What has that process been like?
I think many people are looking from outside, and not just at me, but in general, they're thinking that success or perceived success is like a straight arrow, and in reality, there's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of ups and downs. All in all, I think it's been an extraordinary journey for me. It's been my American dream, for sure. This journey. I think that there's a lot of conversation out there. Does the American dream still exist or not? I think it exists. It's alive and well. And the fact that someone like me coming, by the way, when I came to United States, I had zero experience with any type of mechanical work. If I had a situation like at my apartment, at my condo, I will call my brother to help me to do the repairs for me. So I had no idea. Actually, when I graduated law school back in Romania. So I'm a law school graduate.
Oh.
And also I passed the bar exam too. So if I was to go back to Romania, I could in theory, become an attorney. So I started something that was totally different than what I was preparing myself as a young adult to do. And going from like the very bottom, the most entry level position, even part-time, to become at some point, I became a vice president of facilities, and now being on my own, starting my own consulting firm. This is a very strong statement that this dream exists. The American dream is still available for those that are willing to pursue it. And willing to sacrifice some things, short-term gains for the long-term thing. I couldn't be more grateful. 21 years later, you feel like they went by very fast. But then I'm grateful for all the opportunities and also for all the people that helped me along the way.
Who stands out?
I hope to not leave too many of them out, but the manager that gave me the opportunity for the first full-time position, that $10 an hour with benefits, his name is Scott Purcell. We're still in touch, not as often as we should. Scott, I'm hoping that you're watching this. When this comes out, I want to make to send you the link, right? To see that I haven't forgotten. We gotta get together really soon. Later, when I got my first service manager, my first management position, my manager at the time, the one that interviewed me, was Robin Willie, and then her boss at the time, vice president of operations for Greystar Management. When Greystar was a smaller company, Kelly Steele. She's now the CEO of Woodward Management. So those are only the three, and it's a very, very long list of people that helped me along the way. This actually happens almost like on a daily basis. I get in touch with people that inspire me, people that I look up to. Some of them I consider mentors, even though it's not a formal mentorship, mentor-mentee relationship. But those would be kind of like the top three that come to mind. But too many amazing people to actually count. It would have been a very, very long list of names.
Yeah. So you said something that really resonates with me is from the outside looking in, success looks like it's overnight, or it's like, oh, this guy just happened to just stumble upon all this success. But on the inside, it's like very much a roller coaster of highs and lows and different emotions. Through the last few decades of you being in this industry, what stands out as some of the highest highs and the lowest lows?
Do you mean for me or for the industry in
For
general?
you.
For me.
For you.
Well, I think from a professional standpoint, definitely one of the biggest achievements was becoming a vice president of facilities, overseeing 32,000 apartment homes, such a large portfolio. And one of the lowest things that happened was when the economy went bad in like 2007, 2008. I was at the time a regional maintenance director. And when the economy went bad, my employer eliminated 25% of the corporate jobs. And mine was one of the positions that were affected. I had to take a step back, go back. Back in the day in 2008, 9-ish, there weren't too many corporate level opportunities for maintenance professional like me. So I had to take a step back and go back to site level. And it took me 7 years to get back into a regional role.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you, that must have been tough.
It's been tough. It's been frustrating at the time. But I think that it made me a stronger person. Being able to hang in there for 7 more years. I could have led the industry. I could have started something else. 7 years, it's a long time.
Yeah.
But basically working my way back up to another regional position. And shout out to Jen Bauer, Chief Operating Officer, Max Property. She's actually the one. Back this was with Balfour Berry Communities. She used to be running operations for their conventional division. And she's the one that actually gave me the chance to get back into the regional game. This was in 2017 while I was doing multi-site, like a couple of properties totaling like 800 something, close to 900 apartment homes, but I wasn't a regional. And then she gave me this opportunity to get back into the regional game by overseeing an entire portfolio of properties.
At what point did you realize that you wanted to build a role and career in multifamily? Like, was it just, I know you applied and you fell into this and you started as a groundskeeper. Did you consciously think that you wanted to rise through the ranks, or did it just kind of happen one step at a time?
That's an amazing question. I think it was like this. When I was a groundskeeper, my goal was to become the best groundskeeper that ever has been. And I wanted to teach other guys how to be a very efficient groundskeeper. In fact, I remember that at the time my manager sent me to a couple of other properties that were kind of like struggling to with curb appeal to help their groundskeepers and their teams like doing things more efficient. And then every other job that I got after, my goal was, okay, let me learn this and let me see how much I could get out of it and how much better I could get. So then I always thought 1 or 2 steps ahead, like what are the next? I never really looked outside thinking, okay, this is a transferable skill. I could go do construction, I could do. So to me, I think there's a lot of chatter about we don't have opportunities or career paths. Now that I'm thinking about, it wasn't a conscientious thing, but subconsciously, I saw that there's always has been a next step for me, or like even 2 steps ahead. And this kept me engaged for the entire 20 years. Before you know, here I am 20 years later. Yeah.
That's incredible. So, we talked about your background and your upbringing. We talked a little bit about your journey from being a groundskeeper to who you are today. Maybe we can end and talk a little bit about content and your view on content and the opportunity in the multifamily industry.
That's one of my favorite topics, and I do want to say not just for multifamily, but content is the future. social selling is the future. And I'll use these two words like combine. If you don't have a digital footprint, a digital presence, whether you're an individual or a company, you don't exist. I think Google searches and Google, pay ads, their influence is diminishing, and then the value of social selling is increasing. In other words, the way you will sell a product or a service, it's becoming more and more prevalent. It's going to be by building brand and providing value for your potential customers. So first, they know that you exist. Secondly, they position you as top of mind when they're ready to buy a product or service like the ones that you're developing.
That makes a lot of sense. What's your vision for content in multifamily personally?
I think we're still
offline. We were talking a little bit about how there could be a lot more content opportunities at conferences and recording conversation. Even before this, you and I were sitting down and just casually chatting. We were like, this could be a podcast in and of itself.
Yeah, I really wish that we had a couple of cameras sneaking on us and capturing all that all that we're talking about. Yes. So basically, I want to start with for those of you that don't really know what I currently do. I own a small consulting firm. So I provide consulting for property management companies. But at the same time, part of my firm is a media production. It's a media company. We're partnering ourselves with conferences, with industry conferences. We capture content. We interview industry leaders out there, and we actually push that content into the world. Why did I start this? To go back to your question, why did I start creating so much content? Because we're doing 10, 15 podcast episodes a month. This is just the long form and a lot of short form that comes out of those long form episodes. I think the main reason why I started is that I see that there's a void. There's a void of conversations. Mainly the conversations are taking place at two levels, one-on-one, like we have right now, but without cameras and mics to capture it. And then the other types of conversations, how the information is disseminated, is through company events or conferences like the one we're at this week, UpTech, right? But this is not a scalable model. When you think about it, less than 1% of all the stakeholders in multifamily don't have access to this content. First of all, they're not present at the conferences. Second of all, not only that they're not present, but the conferences might not record and curate the content and make it available to those that are not present. So I said, well, this is an opportunity here because, I could fill this void by doing podcasts and by actually being present at those conferences and capture as much content as possible to share it with those that don't have the opportunity to be present in person.
Totally. And that's really why I started this podcast too, is I feel that in the multifamily industry, there's so many interesting characters and there's so many interesting stories, and I can ask all the questions I can sitting with you at a coffee shop or at the bar or at a conference, but nobody else is going to hear that, right? And that's a shame. And I think content, allowing it to scale to hundreds and thousands of people in this industry is super valuable. And I really look up to you and appreciate all the guidance that I know I'm going to get. So
yeah, well, I'm very pumped about this opportunity, and we should probably share the story how we actually ended up being in a studio, right?
We should, yeah.
Yeah. So you posted about launching your new podcast, and I commented on your post saying, "Hey, congratulations!" And then let's connect if you want to talk shop, and that's how we actually started. And we're recording this at 10 a.m. You invited me around midnight last night. Like that via text message, where you were flying in while I was just landing in Washington D.C. So this is the beautiful part about making things happen and about the industry in general. Like we never met in person. You knew of me. I knew of you. A couple of text messages. And here we are 3 days later, like recording a podcast episode in Maryland, like of all places, at a conference. This is incredibly powerful.
Totally. Yeah. No, I completely agree. I'm just, as you know, just getting into content and really trying to invest in LinkedIn and others. And I'm noticing that there's just such serendipitous things. Like you said, we met 3 days ago, started talking 3 days ago, and now we're sitting here. So for anybody listening, definitely invest in content if you're a founder, if you're a CEO, if you're a multifamily leader, because it's the future.
Yeah. If there's no content, you don't exist for most people. That's just a fact. Like it's not something that's up for debate. I spoke at a conference last week in Denver. It was actually a maintenance appreciation breakfast, and we had like 250 maintenance professionals in a room. And I told them, like, you have to build your brand. You have to have an account on LinkedIn. You have to post. You have to interact. You have to build community. You have to network. If you don't have this, you don't exist. There's so many opportunities that you're missing. Difference between creating proper volume and quality of content and not having a presence is the difference between you chasing opportunities or opportunities knocking at your door. Think about it for a second.
I think that's a perfect place to end. Adrian Danila, thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait for this episode to air.
Yeah, me too.
Where can folks learn about you?
So, thank you for that opportunity. So they could find me in several places. Let's start with my LinkedIn. It's Adrian C. Danila. You'll find me there. We also have our podcasts, have professional pages on LinkedIn. So we have Multifamily X Podcasts that has a page. We have Multifamily Chronicles, and we have the Multifamily Hangout. By the way, that's a weekly live event that we do every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And we also have our websites, Multifamily X Consulting and the multifamilyhangout.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.